Alright guys, good afternoon. It's Jalan with the Paradox Gaming Network. And today we're going to continue our discussion on the upcoming changes to skills in the 4.5 patch. This is going to be part 3, the nuts and bolts of the skills themselves, restricted to the 4 main trees. What we're specifically going to get into today is we're going to talk about the skill changes, and we're going to talk about the new combos and how the new skills are going to combo with other skills. What we are not going to talk about today is we're not going to talk about skill damage changes or healing changes. We're not going to talk about abyssal skills, and we're not going to talk about ancestral skills. In the crawl, walk, run mentality, we started with the changes themselves. Then we talked about passives. Now we're going to talk about the nuts and bolts of the skills, and then we'll finally talk about the changes to the damage. Just so that people, if they pause or they want to skip through a little bit, anything that is a C colon, that just is shorthand for combos with. If it's a combo in the same tree, it's going to be green. If it's a combo out of tree, it's going to be blue. If something was straight removed, I put it in red so people can really key into the big changes to their skills. And then anything that I'm not 100% certain of, or things that I have to test, those are indicated in yellow. Alright, to jump right in, we're going to start with archery. Now you're going to notice on a lot of the archery skills that it says the range was increased. That's from our last video where the range passive was removed, but XL Games just gave a flat increase to the ranges of a lot of the archery skills. Endless arrows, you're going to notice now combos off of bleed. It used to combo when the target was poisoned. Charged bolt used to be used for that stun on slowed targets. It no longer stuns slowed targets. It does increase the slow effect on targets. It combos off of bleed, and it still does that combination with a bubble trap where the target is thrown back and stunned. Snare was changed in that I believe it no longer removes the shackle effect, and it no longer reduces the target's evasion, block, and parry. That's because in aiming shot, which is a self-buff, 40-second cooldown, it increases your ranged critical damage by 56%, and it provides a 100% reduction in shield, block, parry, and evasion. The trick to this is while you're in aiming shot, your movement is restricted to your walking speed. Light arrow is one of the other new abilities in archery. It has a 25-meter range on a 9-second cooldown. It is a 100% chance of a critical hit. That also applies a minus 4% accuracy debuff, which stacks up to 4 times. It also combos off of bleed for extra damage. And when used on a target under Stalker's Mark, it extends the duration of the bleed. Emission Fire, which is the last of the new arrows, has a 10-meter range on a 45-second cooldown. It pushes the target 15 meters away. If the target is already blinded from light arrow, it will weaken the target. And if used on a target under Stalker's Mark, it increases that push by 5 meters. Deadeye changed in that it is now ranged damage 19%, where previously it was ranged attack of plus 80. Concussive arrow, it no longer applies a shackle debuff, it now applies a silence debuff, and its combination with bleed was reduced. It now only ignores 20% of armor per bleed rank, where it used to reduce 40% per bleed rank. Intensity no longer grants an immunity to fear and that growing crit rate increase. It now reduces archery cooldowns by 10%, and it does something else, and I can't seem to nail down the translation. So I just want to say, yes, intensity is going to have another thing that it does. Also, you'll notice that it reduces your threat level by 50%. This used to be a shadow play passive you could take. It's now rolled into intensity. Double recurve, which used to be a 30-minute buff, is now a 12-second buff, and it increases your critical chance by 20%. It was ranged damage by 17%. Missile Rain has no major changes, and Snipe will combo with Snare to trip the target, and the immunity the target received to Snipe is now removed. To close up with Archery, as I said in the beginning, most of the Archery big arrows are now combo with Bleed, Endless Arrows, Charged Bolt, Light Arrow, and Concussive Arrow. But with the removal of Piercing Shot, Archery doesn't seem like it has a ability to apply Bleed. The only ability I've been able to find so far that applies Bleed is Pinned Down. So I'm wondering if there's some other mechanic change coming, just like with the parry change and the block change. So I'm thinking that there might be something else coming that we need to just wait for. To move into Battle Rage, Triple Slash no longer applies Shaken just for attacking. If you triple slash a snared target, it will apply the Shaken. Charge will combo with Stunned, and it will trip a stunned target. Battle Focus, it remains as it is with the following changes. It removes the cooldown reduction, and it removed the mana cost reduction. And I will confirm the actual percentages of everything inside Battle Focus when it's up on the PTS. Whirlwind Slash, it no longer synergizes with Innervate for the trip time, and it no longer does extra damage on shaken targets. What it does do is it combos with Slow or Tripped or Stunned or Bleed. So it combos with a lot of things. It saw its cooldown reduced from 21 seconds to 16 seconds, and its casting time from 1 second to a half second. Sunder Earth combos with Bleed and Toughen, and it does additional damage on tripped targets. Now, big one that I decided to do just a little differently is Frenzy. Frenzy saw changes all over the place, so as you can see, it adds a trip immunity. It had a lot of things taken away. It had a lot of things changed or added. So what I did for this one is I just kind of made it its own new skill box. So Frenzy is going to cost you 55 mana. It's going to grant you trip immunity. It's going to increase your melee attack by 80 whenever damage is received. It's going to reduce your magic defense by 10% each time you damage an enemy. It's going to decrease your mana costs by 70%. Its effect lasts for 20 seconds with the 20 seconds additional per kill. But there is no stun at the end, and so there's no combo with urgency. Precision Strike, it combos with Bleed. Tiger Strike, it changed a little bit. Its range was reduced to 18 meters. The first target gets an Overwhelmed debuff applied. The Overwhelmed target, I think the buff is a 33% reduction of passive health regen, and it stacks up to 3 times. So an Overwhelmed target 3 times would have no passive mana regen. And then Overwhelmed targets are shackled. The only ability that I could find that applies the Overwhelmed debuff is Tiger Strike, so I'm not 100% sure how all that pieces together. It does have some combos with Slow. It snares a slowed target, or it trips an impaled target. So some synergies in there. Bondbreaker, its cooldown was reduced from 24 seconds to 18 seconds, but it no longer removes slowed, and it no longer seems to grant immunity to the things it removes. It only removes them. Terrifying Roar, it will trip a feared target, and no other apparent changes. Olos Hammer, I can't quite put my hands on what they're trying to say the Olos Hammer ability use is. I'm wanting to say that the skill use might have changed closer to how behind enemy lines works, but again, I need to see that in action. It adds a stun on hit, and it does additional damage to slowed targets. It no longer synergizes with electric shock, and it no longer trips. Now, to move into sorcery, as you can see, my previous video mentioned a loss of sorcery cooldowns. What you're going to see is just like archery had a flat increase in range, sorcery had just a flat reduction in cooldowns. You're also going to notice 3 icons on the right hand side of the screen. As we know, you had chilled and then you had deep freeze, and they were the same icon. You now have chilled, you have froze, or I have an N there. It's either froze or frozen. It's all going to depend on how Tryon does the localization on the translation. And then this third icon is freeze, and then it translates to a freeze arrest or a freeze restrain. So you're dealing with chilled, freeze, deep freeze, and frozen. So some of the translations were a little tricky. Big changes. Fireball now combos with electric shock. Its third attack applies conflagration. It no longer synergizes with Innervate, so it no longer does that mana return. And it no longer does extra damage on chilled targets. Freezing Arrow, as you can see, I have freeze duration in yellow. The duration was reduced from 20 seconds to 14. On a chilled target, it applies deep freeze. It combos with Frigid Tracks. Most likely sure it removes the cast time, but not sure. It no longer does additional damage on burning targets. It no longer does additional damage on sleeping targets. What you're going to see throughout Sorcery is they've kind of broken up what synergizes with what. Insulating Lens had 5 seconds taken off of its cooldown, but it now has a 1 second cast time. When it expires, it projects ice shards to all enemies within 6 meters. The shield is now based on your spell power instead of a fixed amount, and it no longer grants an increase to stealth detection. Arc Lightning now combos with the burning debuff, and it no longer combos with electric shock or impaled. Magic Circle, no apparent changes. Freezing Earth, the cooldown was reduced from 36 to 28 seconds. I am most likely certain that when used on a chilled target, it applies deep freeze. It does not freeze tripped targets anymore, and it does not do extra damage based on burning. Flame Barrier, cooldown was reduced from 33 to 26 seconds, combos with electric shock, and it no longer does extra damage to freezing. So pretty standard changes that you're seeing. Fire and ice no longer synergize. Fire and electricity do. Chain Lightning has 2 new combinations with Insulating Lens. One is a silence and one is a stun. My best guess is that the first target you hit with Chain Lightning after putting up Insulating Lens is silenced and stunned for 2 seconds. I don't know how long after putting up Insulating Lens you're going to have to throw that Chain Lightning, but that is something we will test on the test server. And it no longer synergizes with Impale. Searing Earth, reduction from 39 to 28 seconds, combos with Shock, and no extra damage on freezing targets. Frigid Tracks is the one that has that new icon. It looks like now the Frigid Tracks, the debuff it applies is good for 3 seconds, but the steps will melt in 4. Again, need to get that on the test server to test it, or maybe Mark at Omnom, when he finishes his translations, might be able to get some final clarity on those. Meteor, its cooldown was reduced from 45 to 34 seconds. Electric Shock is its new combo. It removed the extra damage from freezing. And God's Whip, its cooldown was reduced and it combos with burning. Okay, and to close up today with Vitalism, first to talk about Holy Bolt. Holy Bolt had its cast time increased to 2 seconds. It still combos with Mirror's Light to do extra damage or the healing that it does. Self-healing is down to 30% of what an ally would be healed for. And Holy Bolt now combos with Bloodthirst, which reduces the cast time by 10% per stack. Mirror's Light, it no longer reduces received healing on a target. Antithesis saw a ton of changes. To talk about the removals first, no longer gets a cooldown reduction from Thwart, no more instacast, no more extra healing from Resurgence, no more extra damage from Charm. What it picked up was its flat cooldown was reduced from 5 seconds to 3 seconds. It combos with Renewal now. It combos with Dissonance for extra damage. And when you are under the effect of Free Runner, the cooldown is reduced by 100% as long as it is cast on someone other than yourself. So if I cast it on you, I should not get a cooldown. If I cast it on me, I will still get the cooldown. Now, I do not know if this is for the entire duration of Free Runner or just the first one. This is going to be a big testing one on the PTS. Resurgence, it's now 50% reduction in hate generation. I'm not 100% sure if this is for the healer who uses it or on the target. Another thing we're going to have to test. Skewer saw its casting time increased. Okay, on Mend, we saw the cooldown reduced from 24 seconds to 16, but it will no longer heal the caster. It combos with Renewal now instead of Resurgence. When under Urgency, it grants a 100% cooldown reduction. Now, I don't know if this is the first time you use it or if you can just spam Mends. I'll have to test that one on the test server. It removed Omnipotent combo, but it still does the on 5 stacks of prayer when under sacrifice. It throws a renewal to everybody, and Mend is the only thing that consumes sacrifice. So you should be able to keep the renewal out. As you see, a lot of things now combo off of renewal. That's the direction Vitalism has seemed to have gone. Revival has a combination with Death's Vengeance. So you heal all raid members within 30 meters when you've used your Revival and you're under Death's Vengeance. That's going to take some testing. Fervent Healing is... its cooldown was increased to 30 seconds, but its cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds when someone is healed. I'm not quite sure what they're meaning at, and I'm thinking maybe that is 2 seconds every time you actually heal somebody, so if you're not just throwing hearts around randomly. It combos with Renewal now for 55% extra recovery, and it combos with Purge, and it is going to throw a random heal to a nearby target if either my target is under Purge and I throw a Fervent Healing at him, it's going to bounce a heart off to somebody. Or if the somebody is under Purge and I Fervent Healing a nearby target, it'll draw a heart, an extra heart to them. Not quite sure how this combination is intended, and the translation didn't really leave a lot of assistance. Renewal, it combos with almost everything now, and it also has a base healing effect as well as that heal over time. Aurenzeb's Boon, no apparent changes. Infuse, its cooldown was reduced from 35 to 25 seconds. It's now a shield from between 12,000 and 18,000 based on healing power. And if your target is under Resurgence, that's going to be a 50% increase in the amount of shields. So you're looking at between 18,000 and 27,000 shield if you infuse a target under Resurgence. And Rhythmic Renewal, if you use Infuse under a target that's under Rhythmic Renewal, that it'll just be an instant heal and put Renewal on them. And then Rhythmic Renewal is a aura-based healing spell. It restores hit points to 10 targets within 10 meters. It lasts 12 seconds, and it cannot heal the caster, is the translation. So, interesting things with self-healing in Vitalism. Here's all my sources that I use this time, if you want to check them out yourselves. So what's up next? I'm going to go into the support tree changes. I'm considering doing Songcraft as its own video just to get that one out there. I know it's not one of the 4 main trees, but with the changes I've seen to healing now, it's really going to divide that line between healers and bards. You're pretty much going to have to, I think, go down one of those routes. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to combine all the slides into one viewable product with no audio. And then I'm going to just have it as a running show, and then I'm going to time index it out so people can just click to the slides they need. And then my next project is going to be some new class ideas, building on some of these new synergies. As always, here's all the ways to get in touch with me. If you need me, get me on Discord, Jalon, #8446.
Hey, you. Yes, you. Yeah, you. I'm talking to you. Hit that subscribe button. Watch a couple of more videos. Go check out our website.